Breaking news. This is your reporter, Deluded Gooner here. As I just said, breaking news to you Arsenal fans. Thomas Partey, our experienced Ghanaian international central midfielder, is leaving Arsenal. Now, that probably scared you lot, people. He isn't leaving anytime soon. Spoiler alert, stay with me. But could it be the inevitable, folks? Allow me to offer some talking points as to just why that could be the case, as to why Mikel Arteta could be keen on moving on Thomas Partey, even though I don't necessarily agree with it. On the face of it, you look at last season, it's well documented. When we had or didn't have Thomas Partey, there was a contrast as to our ability, whether he's able to be competitive and win games. He's a talented midfielder, known for his injury issues. He played 40 times last year, 33 in the league, and you would be forgiven for expecting Odegaard, Rice and Partey to form our new look midfield, people. Instead, this time, owing to injuries and stuff like that, Thomas Partey's only played 5 times across all competitions this season. When you think of Thomas Partey, you think of injuries, and it's well documented the amount of injuries he's had since he signed for Arsenal Football Club. That's the one mark against his name. You can't really have faith that he'll be fit. But I think we need a central midfielder. I think Arsenal are playing a dangerous game. Yes, we've got Jorginho, respectfully, and El Nene, they can do a job. But are those players that you can bet on for 38 games? Excluding Thomas Partey's obviously injury record, you know, in terms of ability, he's a man, regardless of what Mikel Arteta wants to do, he can use him in the team. Even in the earlier part of the season when he was using him as a fullback, it doesn't matter what Mikel Arteta wants to do, Declan Rice can line up. I think we're playing a dangerous game in midfield. I'm sure Mikel Arteta has considered this. I'm sure he's got many midfield trios or pivot pairings that he's discussed and put on the whiteboard on his tactics board at London Coley. But I just think Odegaard, Rice and Partey are our best choice. And I think we're playing a dangerous game. I do find myself sitting here sometimes randomly, people, and considering what if the inevitable happens, which in theory, we've been dealing with injuries since the start of the season, and the inevitable has always also already happened, in a sense of Partey is currently out with a muscle injury. We don't know how long that's going to be, and things like that. Personally, I think we're playing a dangerous game in midfield. If everybody's fit, keyword, if we've got a bunch of options, yes, we have the Fabio Vieiras, the Havertz, the Odegaards, the Smith Rowes, people that can play in those number 8s as well as other roles. But in terms of genuine central midfield options that could line up across a 38-game calendar, in my opinion, we only have Declan Rice. God forbid if something happens to Declan Rice, we're in issues. Big up Jorginho, but you and demands for Jorginho to thrive. You saw when he came off the bench against Spurs, forget the mistake, we was quite open. And as I just said, it feels like we're playing a dangerous game, people, if I'm completely honest with you. You know, you look at defense, if everybody's fit, or in general, we've got some good options there. Tomiyasu is probably the man of the moment. In an attacking sense, yes, we'd like a winger and a striker, but we've got some options. In the midfield third, there's just too many question marks, in my opinion, if I'm completely honest with you. Thomas Partey is a quality player. He's physical, he's tenacious, he's a line-breaking midfielder. He helps us with progressive play. You know, Thomas Partey is a wavy player for us. He's experienced. Obviously, he's a seasoned veteran in that sense. And with us being in a transitional period, returning to the Champions League, he's someone we need to bet on. I do say, though, the best trait you could have as a professional footballer is availability. And I don't think any Arsenal fan is 100% convinced that Thomas Partey won't have any injury issues or won't have segments where he's out of the team, really. And I guess Mikel Arteta and co have to tread very carefully when discussing Thomas Partey's fitness, when discussing his training, and just, you know, the very fact of we're in 4 competitions, 3 of which are active at the moment. We need our best players available, which is why I said, you know, you the best quality you could have is availability. Sorry for getting tongue-tied there. Thomas Partey is a flight risk. In fact, I'm very happy with his addition to the team. I think he's been worth the money. But when you look at Thomas Partey, I would say the only blights against his name would be evidently his injury record, or not really having confidence that he'll be fit for the season. And also, you know, Thomas Partey is good a lot of the time, but there's a couple of games across the season, as I've said once before, that he looks amazing. And what I mean by that is, if you was to type in, I don't know, Thomas Partey, welcome to Arsenal, when he initially signed for the club, his greatest highlights at Atletico, there's a couple of games across the season where he really plays to that high level. Of course, there's some, you know, every player makes mistakes. People remember when, you know, Declan Rice, when he tried to pop it over his head last season and he dispossessed him. Some people remember when Marcus Rashford did him. But Thomas Partey is a key player. I think it would have been extremely idiotic to let both Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey depart. That was our first choice pivot. They're very experienced. We're in a transitional period. And, you know, collectively, you can see Mikel Arteta is trying to add new bows to his arrow and find new systems in terms of the players he deploys. And collectively, I think, there'd be too many holes. I think there is too many holes in midfield at this moment in time. I think with Jorginho, there's certain games he can play and he can do a job and he's a good player. I think there's a role here to play for El Nene, but neither offer what Thomas Partey does. And when you look at all three of the names I've just said, they're all on the wrong side of 30. I believe El Nene and Jorginho, forgive me if I'm wrong, are contracted until 2024. Partey is contracted until 2025. So you'd imagine a discussion has been had with Partey and his agents or Arsenal internally as to whether or not he's going to get a new deal. There was talk around Granit Xhaka last season getting a new contract, and then when he left, it came out in hindsight there was never a contract on the table. So you'd imagine we're looking for midfield targets or midfielders that can take over the mantelpiece. And again, he was linked with a move away from the club across the summer. And it hasn't left him. Again, what actually is happening, or what actually the sentiment at the training club or at the training ground or the football club is very different from the tabloids. But he's been linked with a move away in January. Me personally, you look at Emil Smith-Rowe, you look at Thomas Partey, you look at Aaron Ramsdale, three players who are linked with moves away for different reasons, but fundamentally a lack of game time or maybe a shift in Arteta's plans. I wouldn't let anybody go in January. Everyone can leave in the summer if they want. We give ourselves more time. Of course, if we can get replacements and they force the manager's hand, then fair enough, people. But I don't think it makes sense, really, because Arteta had to bet on these players being here for at least a season when he was planning in the summer, people. And again, we all know he was linked with a move to Saudi Arabia across the summer. It'll be interesting to see what happens next summer with him, because he is on big money. He is contracted until 2025 and he is on the wrong side of 30. I do think Partey, the club, would have let him go if they were given a fair price and they were able to do other things in the market in terms of replacements. But I just think in the summer there was just too much to do. The focus was probably on shifting the Tierney's, the Pepe's, the Tavares's, the Ballagans, etc. And then if it came to it and an offer far too good to turn down, Partey maybe have made the move. He still is linked with a move to Juventus. I don't think a loan move to Juventus makes sense unless the player wants to try a new experience. Juventus take on some of his wages, and fundamentally, as you keep hearing me say, we're able to find a suitable replacement within this Arsenal team. As I said, I don't think it makes sense to let a number of these players leave. We've seen what injuries can do at the last furlong of a season. We've seen how Arsenal in the last 2 years, when we tried to get top four initially and lost to Spurs and obviously lost out on the title, the last furlong is where obviously we've been done dirty. Obviously, a bit of it is gamesmanship, but in the summer, Mikel Arteta did say, yes, every time I spoke to him, his will is to stay with us. There's nothing about a potential move at all. Without question, Partey is a super important player for us, and for me, we want him to be in the team. That's for sure. You obviously saw Partey play right back, really, so that tells you he is a vital moment player and cog in Arteta's system. But I think everyone can forgive Arteta if he says, despite all of this, he needs to find other situations, and he's kind of forced to try other things because he can't bet on Thomas Partey. As I said, some fans wanted him gone. I do think some fans move like he's some bog standard player and we don't need him in our team. I don't think personally it makes sense to let the man go in January, especially if there's no confirmation over bringing in a replacement. It would have been lovely to bring in Declan Rice and Alavia, for example. Edu and Arteta were midfielders. They have shown that they think not just one in terms of one season, but seasons ahead. So you'd imagine they're speaking of midfield targets and assessing their options in January and beyond that. Again, we're going to consistently get linked with midfielders. Being linked and actually buying players are different things, but us and Liverpool have been linked with Fluminense's Andre, which I don't think we're going to get. Zubimendi links will not go away. I don't think we'll prize him away from Sociedad in January, if I'm completely honest. And in recent days, we've once again been linked with Douglas Luiz. So there's no smoke without fire. We have to be looking at a midfielder, people. And there's many question marks over Thomas Partey. Will the man stay? Will he be let go in January or in the summer? Do we have the ability to cope without him? Again, people, I'm sure I've provided some talking points. Please let me know your thoughts. Would you let Partey go in January? Would you let him go in the summer? Do you think we should move away from him and make him a rotation option rather than a regular because of his fitness issues, although he was available for 40 games last year? Let me know your thoughts and don't forget to smash the like button. Big up you lot, people. I know that I said that was the end of the video, but I've still got some extended thoughts that I'd share with you in relation to Partey. I've got my notes in front of you, people, and I'm just going to read them off. Like I said, like the video, smash the comment section, people. Let me know your thoughts and subscribe if you haven't. As my notes have said here, why is nobody speaking about Partey and the Partey problem in my opinion? Because I think midfield is a problem. You look at defense, we've got some very good options. You look up front, as I said, if we could bring a winger or a striker in, I'd be for it, but we've got some good options. Midfield throws up too many question marks. Declan Rice is the only player that has some longevity in him. And obviously you can see that regardless of what Mikel Arteta wants to deploy game to game, Declan Rice is a key part of that. People that are likely to line up alongside Rice in that regards and just behind Odegaard, we don't really have some. As I said, I think there's a role for El Nene. I think there's a role for Jorginho. But are they players that we can build around in terms of long-termism, in terms of age? Partey as well, they don't really provide that. We all know there's certain games where Jorginho looks a very good player and some games where he hasn't got the physicality for it. El Nene isn't the most glamorous on the ball, but he has got legs and you can utilize him in a certain aspect. You throw in the Partey conundrum of never really being fit, even though he was fit for 40 games last season, which is unheard of. It is ridiculous. And I think the fact of that I think he's only played 104, 105 games for Arsenal, 85 in the Premier League. That highlights that the best ability you can have or the best trait as a footballer is availability. It is an issue. You know, will Arsenal, when Arsenal field offers for Partey, I don't know. He's contracted until 2025. You look at next summer, people, in terms of what Arteta wants to do, I assume midfield, I assume maybe bringing in a right winger to compete with Saka. Obviously, if you're bringing in a striker, Ivan Toney, Osimhen, they're going to cost a lot of money. And you look at resale value, you know, even though we did good business in terms of moving people on last summer, a lot of what we did are loans and cancelling contracts where Pepe is concerned, you know, Tierney, Tavares, Lokonga, their situations we're going to have to deal with. When you look at recouping value, of course, we're going to have to buy replacements. But, you know, we're not talking about Ramsdale, but you could imagine Ramsdale could get 30 all the way to 50 million. Smith Rowe might be able to bring a handsome fee if, you know, the same talking points and sentiment around these players continues. Thomas Partey might be presented with an opportunity to take hefty wages off the wage bill. And, you know, obviously declining doesn't always mean a bad thing. You know, Modric is still a great player, but he's not the Modric he once was 10 years ago. He's still a suitable player, but you've got a depreciating asset. We knew when we bought Partey for 45 odd million quid, we weren't going to get significant money, but freeing up his wages, getting some sort of fee that can be reinvested into midfield and other areas of the squad might not be, you know, might be too good to turn down. I think there is a reality where 1 to 3 of El Nene, Jorginho, and Partey could depart. I'm not necessarily for that. You know, Jorginho has an extension in his contract, but again, you're playing a dangerous game. El Nene is a valued member of the squad. Maybe with that, you could make a case of letting Partey run down his deal for a year. And even that, you know, Partey, does he actually want to stay? Does he want to move next summer or in January? Because he could run down his deal and maybe get a move to a European club where obviously you're in line to get more wages because there won't be a transfer fee per se, really and truly. And I wonder if Saudi Arabia offers come next summer, will he want to do that? Or will he run down his deal in the hopes of attracting a European club and an important contract because he's 30, 31. If you could get a 3 to 4 year deal, you're laughing. Edu and Arteta are not stupid. They're both midfielders. They've shown with this project, they don't just think for 1 year, but arguably the next 4 or 5 years, such as with the players they've brought in, the system we're deploying, the ethos we're doing at the football club, and the willingness to keep committing players to new contracts. You look at Ramsdale, he got a new deal, and that we're in a stronger position to sell him, basically, because even regardless of what Raya is doing, really and truly, I just don't think Jorginho and El Nene are of the level. I think our best midfield trio is Partey, Rice, and Odegaard. Of course, I don't need to see that game in, game out. Arteta is allowed to do other things. And you do have to wonder, could the Kai, obviously the jury's still out on Kai Havertz, and he might prove this wrong, but as much as I say we needed 2 midfielders in the summer, we did. We brought in Havertz and we brought in Rice. You know, could that 65 million on Rice been spent on the younger model of Partey? Could it have been reinvested in other areas? I'll let you look at such people. And again, you know, Jorginho, El Nene, and Partey, they could all run down their deals, or they could all be sold, really and truly, if I'm honest with you. As I said, Rice is our only true midfield option, in my opinion, currently, who you can bet your hat on will be here for years to come. Could it be a case of signing a midfielder in January? I know the talk is around a winger and a striker, but I think midfield is a priority. I think there's too many question marks in the middle of the park, if I'm completely honest with you. Could it be one in January and one in the summer, as well as obviously in the summer? I'm sure, you know, a striker and a winger, these will be talking points. We've also been based on we've had several links to a centre back or centre halves this season. So you could argue that Arsenal are looking for a centre half, as Ornstein's once said, a winger, a striker, and a midfielder, you know, and they're all equally important. But, you know, midfield, in my opinion, central midfield is where we look the weakest, people. In theory, I know Partey's age and injury inconsistencies is one thing, but he could be one of the only quote sellable assets. You can make a case of Ramsdale maybe leaving in the summer, Tavares, Tini, and Lokonga. I have no clue if they'll be able to, get permanent offers next summer. There's always rumours around Smith Rowe, Reece Nelson, and Eddie Nketiah of leaving. You've obviously got young Charlie Patino, whose deal's also running down, but you'd imagine if these three midfielders leave, then there'll be a pathway for him to step up. And we all know you've got Fabio Vieira, Martin Odegaard, Havertz. In theory, Zinchenko can play in midfield. You've got a bunch of players that can line up next to Declan Rice, but for one reason or another, they haven't played there really and truly. So we'll have to see, in my opinion, really. But I do think midfield is a problem. I don't want to be that guy. I'm not trying to make people scared, but I'm just being honest, if I'm completely honest with you lot. So yeah, people, let me know your thoughts on Jorginho, on Partey, on El Nene, on Declan Rice, on our midfield in general. Where do you guys think is the priority for Arsenal Football Club? Because as I said, up front, right wing, central midfield, you could make a case of not a priority, but another defensive body. Again, football would be boring like life if we all thought the same. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Like, comment, and subscribe. Appreciative to all of you lot tuned in. Take care, stay blessed. One love.
There's always just that active red flag defenders. I think it's like